All right, so welcome to EDF5641. One of the things that I'm really going to try to do in these face-to-face classes is not only are we going to discuss what we've read and things that we're learning, but what I want to do is I want to model what I would do in a language classroom. Now, just a quick kind of figuring things out. Is there anyone in here that is teaching something or would like to teach something other than English? What language?
Oh, it's not language, actually it's like kindergarten.
Okay, so young children.
Yeah.
So do you think you would be teaching English for early learners?
Actually, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, so that's your experience. Any other languages that you might be teaching?
I'm doing also teaching in secondary. Specialty is English.
Okay, yes. Mandarin. Okay. And that's an important thing, is that sometimes in these classes, we get very focused on English, but understanding that there's other languages as well, not just English. There's two over here and one over there. So this is about pedagogy, language, pedagogy, and assessment. So we will talk a lot about English, but there may be some of you that are planning to teach or focus on languages other than English. So maybe, for example, Mandarin. Okay? So that all applies. I want to give you a little bit of background about myself. We've kind of discussed on the forum about world Englishes. Where does my English come from? Oh, very good. Yeah, so I originally am from the US. And I lived in, is anyone in here from Vietnam? No, I think it was only the online group. So I lived in Vietnam for 5 years and then I moved to Australia. So my children speak in an Australian accent. And I speak in an American accent. And it's quite interesting because even though I'm an Australian citizen, when people see me, they say, oh, the American. So I don't think I'll ever be fully Australian because of my accent. But I'm sure that's something that you probably feel in your own language identity, that even though you speak English, often people don't necessarily recognize that you're a bilingual or multilingual speaker. They think of you as a non-native speaker. And really, that's our job as educators, to change those ideas about what kind of what language is and the value of multilingualism. And not just about English learning, but about language in general. I started out as a primary school teacher in the US. I taught young children. And it was actually there that I had a student in my class who spoke Spanish and they didn't speak any English. And I became very interested in English as a second language. So I went back to study and did my, wait for it, my master's in TESOL. So this was in the US. And then I started traveling around with that. And then I came to Australia to do my doctorate. My doctorate was looking at assessment, particularly language assessment. Now, I would assume that many of you took IELTS. Yep. Is that right? Yeah. Anyone take TOEFL? Oh, a few people. Okay. So my study was actually on the TOEFL IBT and looking at how it impacts on how students learn and how teachers teach. So that's my background. So I really do look for, one of the things I do love to do is I love teaching. And so I hope that we'll focus a lot on engaging in activities. And this is kind of my way of teaching, which may be odd to some of you. We'll do some activities, but the idea is at the end of this, I hope that you also have some different activities or things you could use in your class if you're going into a classroom. So not just learning about the content, but using that content to think about ways to engage people or students in language, all right? We will talk about the assignment. Just a raise of hands for now. Have you watched the video, the assessment video, okay? Was that helpful? No, it wasn't helpful. Because there will always be, we can't help it. As students, what do we want to know? We want to know about what we have to do well in the class. And it often comes through the assessment tasks. And I get it and I understand it. So that video is there for you to look at. And if you have questions, you can ask me, but it should give you all your basic information. But we will talk a little bit about that afterwards. Okay? Now I'm going to stop talking for a little bit. And we are going to move on to our first activity. Now, I'm probably showing my age here, but I really loved the 80s. Okay? You may recognize this song, and this is going to probably seem very weird to you, but it will be a little bit fun. So what I want to do at the moment is we're doing an activity where we do some sharing. It will get a little bit noisy, but what I'd like you to do is stand up. And because of this room is a bit strange, we're going to try to push the chairs back a little bit. And you're going to, instead of making a circle, you're going to make kind of a line-ish. Okay? Actually, let's see. No, I have a better idea. We're going to use this table as our circle. We're going to start with this group. What you're going to do is you're going to face me. Okay? Turn around. Turn around. Turn around that way. And then people are going to come in and make that first circle so everyone's facing out. And then, as soon as we get that first circle, then the outer circle will find someone to pair up with. You see? So I think we need about 15 people in the first inner circle and then 15 on the out. Let's see how we go. And we'll go from there. All right? So come on. Sorry. It's okay. Come on in. So we need some inner circle people. Get in nice and close. There you go. You might push the chairs. There you go. Okay, and now go find someone to stand in front of. And if we need to add more people, so just find someone to you. Turn around. Someone's going to come to you. So here you can stand in front of this person. Oh, yeah. We have someone over here. Can someone come over here? Over here. Over here. Sorry, come over here. Does everyone have a partner? No? Yeah. There's someone here? How many extra people do we have? You can come over here. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so you are with her. Okay, and we need one extra, right? Let's just make sure. Who's your partner? There. Okay, so you are going to come. See, this is the great thing about teaching, organization. Here we go. And there we go. There we go. Now does everyone's standing in front of someone. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a prompt. It's going to go on the board. Okay. I'll give you an example. The first one that we're going to do is my name is. So if this was my partner, sorry, what's your name? Stella. Stella? Yes. Okay. So the inside circle is going to go first. Okay. So what they're going to do is when it starts, to say, my name is Stella, and I decided to become an English or whatever language teacher because, now don't go ... but then you give your answer. Okay. You explain it. Then you will go, hi, my name is, I've decided to become, so because, have a little chat. Then when I say switch, now this is where it gets confusing. Inner circle, do not move. Promise me you will not move. Okay. Okay. Outer circle, which way is your right? This way. You are going to go one person to the right. So all of a sudden now, this is my new partner. Okay. You're going to do it again. Okay. And then you're going to get better and better. Then I'll say stop. Then we're going to try it. The other one, my name is, and I think students want to study English because, and then we'll go, and then I'll say we're going to switch to another thing, but I'll guide you. And then the last one is my name is Melissa, and I hope to learn more about speaking in this unit because I like to speak at the moment. So you see how it goes. Okay, does everyone know what we need to do? Yeah. Why would we do something like this in our class? Kind of an icebreaker. What other reasons?
Introduction.
Yeah, introduction. You get to know some people. Yeah. You're going to be best friends by the end of this class with all of your classmates. So you get to know them. It kind of makes it feel not so awkward. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. But just to kind of get us going. And also because it's 6 p.m. and some of us would rather be home eating and sleeping. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. All right. So I'm going to turn on the music because for me, the music, yeah, and the song is you spin me around. So this is the idea, we're going in circles. All right, so I'll start the music. Hold on. Okay. And inner circle, begin. My name is. What's your name? All right, stop. Go. Outer circle to the right. I know it's a difficult to the right. One. Go to the right. Do the same one again. Right on the side. All right, stop. Okay, one person to the right outer circle. All right. Now we're going to go to the second one. We're going to the second one. My name is, and I think students want to learn or study. All right, stop. We're going to do that same one, but one person to the right. One person to the right. One person to the right. Hi. I'll be your partner for this one. And then all right, stop. Now this will be our last one. It'll be the last prompt. My name is, and I hope to learn more about something in this unit because. This will be our last one, so one person to the right. Okay.
Hi, my name.
You're so excited. All right, the last one.
My name is
right. Thank you. You may go back to your table. You may go back to your tables. Thank you. All right. Now, just as something, it was really interesting, and I can't remember who said it in the discussion forum. And I think they were saying they were from China, and they had an American teacher come in, and would often do their pedagogy was very much based on their culture. So I think that always important is that what happens a lot of times is when teachers come into a place like Australia, and they learn all these different things, and then you go, you couldn't do that in a classroom, in wherever. So it's always important to kind of stop and think about why do you do certain activities, and how might you adapt it for your teaching context. Sorry, I'm just running from that screen. So something like this, what are some of the drawbacks or challenges of an activity like this that you found? Look at the noise. It does get quite loud, and the space sometimes, especially because then you are talking louder. So those are things to kind of think about. And if you're not a very confident speaker, it's really hard to voice yourself in such a loud space. Any ideas of how you might change this to better fit your teaching context? Would you use something like this? Would it work? Yeah. How many, and I know this is the thing, usually in this class there are some of you that have come from teaching and you've taught, and some of you that haven't. So, and unfortunately those of you who haven't, because our first assessment task is writing a lesson plan. And so it's always, a little bit more difficult, but that's okay, because it's about learning. And I want to make this comment about learning. Again, there was another, I think it was one of the online students that was talking about how they really wanted to do well in this unit. And I think what's interesting is that we often worry so much about the assessment tasks, and particularly the mark you get, but do we worry about the learning? Could we get a bad mark and still learn a lot? We'd be so upset. We wouldn't care that we learned anything. But it's really interesting as teachers that we want students to learn, but most students just want to perform. And I want you to just, as an idea, think about that for us it's true, we want the good mark. And sometimes we would rather have the good mark than learn anything. And even if we learned something, we would be upset if we didn't get a mark that was high. And I think this is something that happens in a lot of places, but it becomes really difficult as teachers because you have to try to engage students in learning, and ultimately it really does matter about the end of the assessments. So this is something we will also talk about a little bit in this unit. Okay. So now you've gotten to know some people, and hopefully you feel a little bit comfortable. And again, I want to also remind you that this is a safe place. I will, sometimes play 80s music. I will do things, but this is a safe place here. So, and we all bring something to this classroom. You will bring your expertise in your teaching context and where you're from, and that's something I don't know about. So remember, we all bring something to this context. All right, we're going to do another activity. Now, this is for review. Again, another thing that we would probably do a lot of in a language classroom. Okay? Has anybody ever, do you know what this is? Has anybody done something like this? It's a mess, but it is. So good. Oh, and I just want to make, I don't mean to, I'm just going to introduce this is Sohyun, and he can maybe chat with you. But he's actually he's a PhD student here. So he's just coming in and will be part of the class. So we welcome you. The nice thing is he doesn't have to do any of the assignments. He can just come in. So if you need extra help, I think he should help you because he doesn't have to do that. Can you just help me? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a piece of paper, or Sohyun's going to give you a piece of paper. Okay, and the idea is that you are going to write an answer to this question. What is one thing that you found interesting in this week's lecture or in the readings? Okay, so one thing that you found interesting, you're going to write it down. You don't need to put your name on here, just write it down. And then I'll explain what we do. So I'll give you 5 minutes to do this. 5 minutes to write one thing that you found interesting in this week's lecture or reading. Now, given that we didn't do anything, we haven't seen each other since week 1, you can also put something about week 1 if you want to, or about week 2. So anything that you found interesting. Or maybe something you had a question about. Is that how you say it? Hakim? Is that how you say it? Hakim? Yeah. I heard my voice somewhere in the video. Oh, I just it also happened. We were just trying to see how smart I was. Trying to Now, don't worry about this because this is just, and you won't even see this again because, and nobody will know that you wrote this. So don't stress. Again, so it doesn't need to be perfect. This is just your ideas. It could be as simple as a question that you have. Okay. Where do you come from? I think something like that. A while now, but I was learning Spanish. But I was living with a family in my group. Beautiful people, yeah, it's lovely. All right, 30 more seconds. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, don't worry if you didn't finish what you wanted to say, just stop there. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take it in our hands, we're going to crumble it into a ball. Okay? That feels nice, really tight. Okay. Now the idea is this, if you are going to throw it, but the thing is not at anyone's head. Unless you know them really well, okay, then you can. You're going to throw it, and then, so when I tell you, you'll throw it just randomly, and then everyone needs to go find, not your own snowball, but just a random one, okay? So let's say, throw it, I pick one up, and Tina picks one up, and so then I go find a partner. So I spot Tina. I have one, she has one. We don't know who wrote these. We're going to just sit down and we're going to discuss what this person thought was interesting. Whether did we think that was interesting? Did we read that? Do we even know what they're talking about? You know, you might go, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't actually read the readings. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, but this is your opportunity to kind of review and think about what is read. Okay, so on the count of 3, you're going to throw your snowballs. And remember, at the end, we have to recycle the snowballs because we are sustainable here at Mana. Okay? So, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, throw. Spring. All right, collect the snowball, find a partner, sit down, and reflect on those. Yeah. Oh, you're just gonna. No, well done. I want you to say thank you to this table. Everyone else is like, I'm just gonna go next to the person I'm sitting next to. But you can mingle. That's fine. Whoever's next to you, have a chat. There you go. What is it saying? I can't read. I know the rest of that.
Experiment.
All right. Go ahead and return back to your seat. All right, any interesting conversations? I did find, you were laughing before, that someone in here thinks it's interesting they only have one face-to-face tutorial this week. So that was interesting for them. Anything else? Was that useful for thinking about things that you've read about? What was one thing that you learned, Cole, that you told me? Something about handwriting.
Yeah, it's nasty.
We all should probably work on our handwriting. But hopefully this is an opportunity for people to reflect on what they read and then discuss. And then if you get something that you hadn't thought about, it might then prompt ideas. So again, this is just one way to kind of think back to the readings or to the lectures. That's the other thing. How are you finding the mini lectures? Hopefully not too long, because I know nobody wants to listen to an hour-long lecture. So I'm trying to make them short with a lot of information and then be done. So hopefully that helps to kind of, especially when we have the online weeks, to tie those things together. All right. Now, a little bit about this unit. One of the things that was really helpful is if you can go ahead and read before the tutorial, because the more that you read before the tutorial, the easier it is for us to really unpack and discuss. But you are adults, and if you don't want to read, you don't want to read, that's fine. I'm not going to be checking on you, but it does make the discussions, because we will have a lot of discussions, because you are all very intelligent people. You would not be in this course if you weren't a very intelligent person. So we are interested in finding out what we do when we have lots of intelligent people discussing the things that we're reading. Some readings will be easier to understand than others. Like the N-bound and C-bound, some people probably thought that was really difficult to read. And that's okay, because this is, for some of you, this may be your first or second semester. And when you join, particularly a master's degree, and you're an international student, sometimes it's kind of like learning a new language of university, reading articles, getting used to it. Sofia knows this because he's doing his PhD, and there's a lot of research terms that are quite new. And so you're kind of learning a different language. So sometimes it takes a while. But by the end of your degree, you might read back on some of these articles and you go, oh yeah, I understand. So just know that you are learning, and some readings will be easier and others will be more difficult. How many of you have the textbook by Harmer? Yeah, Just a few hands. That, I think, is a really practical and a good reading source that's quite, not necessarily easy to read, but will be much easier to understand than some of the articles. So I think it's a really handy book to have. Did yours come with a DVD?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you may not ever look at them, but there are some interesting things there. And the other thing I want to mention to you, this picture is of my two children.
Oh,
yeah. Thank you. And so one of the things that I find is that, and actually I don't really find this is the case as much with master's students. I find this a lot more with undergraduate. But because of email, often we expect a very quick response. Now, I'm usually quite quick with emails, but I try really hard not to look at emails on the weekend. Because of this. Okay? So just know that if you don't hear from me on the weekend, I will get to it on Monday. Okay? But I'm usually pretty approachable. If you want to make an appointment with me, if you want to talk to me, I'm happy to do that. And again, what we'll try to do, particularly when we get closer to the assessment task, getting time to talk about and make sure you're on the right track. Because I think that's mostly what people want to know. Am I on the right track? Okay, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? So I promise you, I will not just leave you to figure out what's happening with assessment tasks. In each tutorial that we do face-to-face, I will help guide you in the things that you need to do your assessment tasks. Okay, and we'll break it down. But always come ready with questions, because that will help me know what sorts of things to focus on. You can always email me, and we can discuss things. One of the things that I want you to avoid doing is sending me your full 4,000-word lesson plan and say, can you give me some feedback? Now, if you have a specific question, like you said, look, I had this idea of an activity, but I'm not sure if it works. That's different. But just sending me your assignment and going, can you give me some feedback? You can give me specific questions, and I'm happy to give you feedback on your assignment, but it needs to be specific, not just, and so you have to do a bit of work, okay? And yeah, we can discuss that more. But again, I'm happy to give feedback as needed. All right, our next activity is where we get to draw on tables, okay? So, which is always fun. A lot of people like to draw on tables. We're gonna do some mind mapping. So, what I think will happen is you'll probably do this in your tables, which is fine. And I want you to use the knowledge of everyone at your table to create a mind map. So a mind map is really just putting some key ideas or concepts and putting some notes down. So here are some samples. You don't have to use these headings, and you can use different ones. But from this last week, these are some of the key concepts or ideas. So you can start with them. Maybe you just start with one, and then you put some notes. But then the idea is, after we have some time with this, you can go around with your phone, take a picture, walk around, take a picture. And then all of a sudden, you have notes on your reading. And maybe someone made some connections that you hadn't made before. Okay? So that's the idea, is we're taking because there's a lot of ideas in the reading that we focused on this week. So how do we take that and how do we start understanding it? How do we start making connections? So you are going to use the collectiveness of your table. Hopefully someone has read something at your table, and you can start putting that together. All right, do you have any questions? Okay. So you have some whiteboard markers that I put there. If you need more, let me know. But I think we have 3 per table.
You don't have to choose anything. You don't have to choose from them.
Yes.
So, what are we doing? Yeah, nice features. That's very.
But I'm gonna still need this for a couple of weeks. So I'm not gonna look at everything. I'm gonna go in a different order. So Hakeem, Monroe, Stella, Destry, Sun. Yeah.
It's related to environment. Yeah.
What is
I'm gonna send around the roll, if you can choose your name, and if you have like an English name or another name, just put it next to it so I know.
I read the. I read the address.
That makes
Kindergarten, that's what we did. He was English teacher. Yeah. The kids.
And there is a specific process of perspectives on how speculation. It's only because the book has these slides on it. So you can, figure your snake. If you are students interested in journalism, those are the evident notes. Is bilingualism and the critical separation is and picture it like if you can have so president in immersion writing down like teachers actually students have a barrier to run the talent to the following languages. So it doesn't mean that they don't speak in English. I wish. So you also like sticking with the second language acquisition? Yeah, that's what we were talking about this week. Oh yeah. Or we can say
And they care about I
think there's like a lot of things. And I think that's we also have ESL. Second language. EFS. Say like L2 speakers. Yeah, because they need to. That's because yeah, kind of give you enough input so that it becomes a subconscious perception. Yeah. Yes, but basically we have limited space. Yeah, my hands are not that fast. So you can add, you guys can add whatever you want. It doesn't
Okay, 3 more minutes to finish up.
That's just my, this is my takeaway. Yeah. That's like a bug. And I think it doesn't have to be based on these topics, perspectives on how it is relevant. Maybe some theories you oh, you also like this brother. I think that is said that for lectures out to they have
All right, we're going to do what we call a bit of a gallery walk. Okay? So a gallery walk, you go to a gallery, you walk around and look at the other pictures. But you're going to walk around and look at the other notes. See how they've organized their ideas. Are there any concepts that you didn't mention that you think are interesting? If you want to take a picture, you can take a picture of the table. So go ahead and do this a gallery walk.
Okay, so it's here.
address your question. Oh my God.
We're going to start taking pictures of you. Who's that guy in your picture? Who's just ready?
I know.
Yeah, we discussed it. Because are you like what area? Well, they were. And sometimes there's just more like I think so it just kind of depends, but there are. I'm afraid to that's what questions you bring. You know, at that point, your context. And it just,
A lot of space.
yeah, it was good.
Put away
So
the
what I'm
laptop.
saying, as he did with message, he was like the only mediator.
It says
This is definitely
unless they
and I think that's what these design are really helpful for your
All right, we're gonna go on to so we have 2 more activities, so it's all based around activities. What I do try to do is I try to finish around 7:40 to 7:45, because what I find is that a lot of people have questions, and then we're here till really late, so then we can ask questions and do that sort of thing. Because I'll say, does anyone have any questions? And no. And then when it's time to go, there's like a big line. So we'll do that. But our next activity, so was that helpful to kind of get your ideas out there, remember what you read, see what other people were talking about? Helpful? Okay, that's fine. All right. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do some interviews, but I'm just gonna make this rule, because I'm about rules, form focus. Now, rules, you cannot interview someone from your current table. I know, but okay, so you're going to interview someone, but there are some information here. So you need to find someone in the room that is wearing similar shoes to you. Okay. Now, some of you may not be wearing, like you find that there's no one. There are other people wearing high boots. Good. So some of you may go, I have my own style, nobody has my style. That's fine. There will be someone else who has their own style, and you can find their shoes. The idea is just to get with a partner, and you're going to interview them. So you're going to ask questions like, how did you learn English? Could be interesting. How did your parents support the development of your home language? Did your parents encourage you in your home language? Okay. Which if you were born in another country, that's probably obvious. But if you were born here in Australia, it may not be, right? The other thing is you can add something to that. How do they support your English language development? Especially, I know there's a lot of you who come from China, and there's so much focus on special language schools to do, in addition to what you're learning in school. What do you think is more important? Accuracy, like grammatical accuracy, or fluency, even if it's with some mistakes? What's better, accuracy or making some mistakes but being fluent? And why? What role does motivation play in language learning? Can someone's home language act as a resource or an interference in learning another language? Explain and give examples. So and I'll give you like an example of, in Vietnamese, and I think maybe there's some similarities with Chinese, it's monosyllabic, so you have like words, and often the end of the word isn't really important because the emphasis is on the first part of the syllable. So things like, in English, a lot of our tenses, so adding ed, it changes when it happened. But if you focus not on the end of the word, that often falls off, and then you don't hear that. So that's where someone's first language, but in some ways, not necessarily interfere, but it does kind of influence how they learn English. Okay, there's certain like pronunciation things. Like some cultures struggle with L's and R's, things like that. How do you think teachers should teach English grammar? Do you think it should be the main focus of language learning? Should it be taught before or after a task? Are there certain grammatical structures that should be taught first? What are your thoughts? And do you think language learners can learn from their peers, and how so? So this is the interview. So you're going to, you can do it however you like. Maybe one person just wants to ask all the question and then you switch. Or you ask the question and you both answer. But the idea is that then you are going to get in with another pair and you're going to talk about these. And so the idea is that you're listening, you're good active listeners, so you can say, oh, that's interesting because my partner said, okay, so that's how it goes. So you're going to stand up, you're going to try to find someone based on their shoes to partner with. Yeah. So you could go back to one of the tables and sit down and interview.
So you're the invite.
All right. You may still be talking, but I'd like you to try to get with another group. If you're still, okay, I'll give you a choice. If you're still going, because I think I'm getting the look from other that he's saying, but we're not finished yet. Okay, so do you need maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you another 3 minutes. And then we're gonna go on to, you'll get another group and then you'll discuss in general some of the interesting things. And then we'll go on to our next activity. All right, so 3 minutes to finish. All right. Did you already finish? Just two officials.
Because how we let what you
So we're as we see these
yeah. I have I ended up like this was and sometimes I would just say, huge. What do you think? Yeah, I think like they would actually know how to languages, develop languages because you learn to develop in English. Yeah, but we know how to do conversation. Other expressions and just
All right, so now you're going to, not all of them, in general, a summary. You don't have to talk about every question. You can just give some summary. So you will find another group, and as Angie, right? Angie was saying, it doesn't, if the other group has someone from your table, that is okay. You are allowed to go to that group. But just find another group. And again, you might talk about, you might introduce your partner and discuss some things, or you might just have a general discussion about some of the interesting things that you were discussing. So don't feel like you have to just introduce your partner and talk about them, but you can have just a general discussion. Okay? All right. Find another group.
units. Yeah. Yeah. The first question, we agree in a way that right the context of the
Actually, I think this is the case with my students. I took this as what I was teaching to it's a concept for me it's very fast. So I would think I think 6 years old, so I remember that and I think they're like
All right, go ahead.
All right, I said I would try to keep it going, so you always have something to do. We have one last activity that we're going to do, and this is our main one. So we're going to talk about, we've been talking about this, but we're going to do a little activity. So language acquisition and learning strategies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split you in half. Okay, so I'll probably do, I'll tell you, but half of you are going to look at language acquisition and half of you are going to look at learning strategies. And I have some special questions for you to think about. But what I want you to do, and you'll probably do this in your tables and that's fine. So think about your team as your table. You have a choice. You can create either a poster or create a video. Okay. And the idea, and actually it doesn't even have to be a poster. You could just rub out what's on your table and use that and take a picture. Because this will be your activity that you put onto the discussion post for this week. So you don't have to do anything else for the discussion forum. You just need to put that up and you can discuss and watch other people's, okay? So then you can look at their, the videos and posters and respond, keep the conversation going. And now that you know each other, it's interesting. All right, so I'll show you the prompts and then I'll decide who's doing which, okay? So team A is going to really use these questions to talk about through the video poster. So how is learning a first language the same or different from learning a second language? Okay. How is the role of the parent and the teacher different or the same in developing a child or student's language? So those are the two things. So what you would do as your group, you would either create a poster of some of your ideas, or you would just create a video of you discussing it and talking about, well, you would obviously plan it and then you would discuss it. Okay. So just remember, this might be your opportunity for creativity. Some people don't like video, some people do. The other one is language strategy. So what are the characteristics of a good language learner? What do they do that sets them apart from other language learners? How might you support students who may be struggling to learn English? Okay. I'm actually going to do this. Instead of team A and team B, I'm going to let you as a table decide whether you are team A or team B. So you decide whether you want to focus your poster or video on language acquisition or language strategy. Now remember, if you're doing a video, because this happened last year, because I only teach in the second semester, so this runs in first semester, but I only teach it in the second semester. And maybe for the videos, they made one person do it, or they had a few people. So you decide. Some were very creative, some were just them talking about it, that's fine. Or the posters, you all, one person's a scribe and they do it. So however you'd like to do that. So your decisions you have to make is, are you team A or are you team B? Are you going to do a poster or a video? If you're doing a poster, I have paper, or you can just do it on the table. So let me know. And then you need to brainstorm, think about how would you answer these questions, and then you use the video or the poster as a way to show what you think about it. Okay?
Oh, so I suppose I chose the poster one. Do we need to come up with one answer, or just like there are individual answers to that question?
Yeah, this is the thing, is it can be anything. So it can be like a mind map. So maybe you have one question and you have these different ideas. Maybe it's a picture. Maybe it's a, it can be anything. So that's the creative part of it, is that some people, and I will always see this with mind maps, you see people and they have like step by step. And then there's like me who, I have like, it's messy. My ideas tend to be messy and everywhere. But it's however you want to do it. And it may just be pictures of something that prompts with some keywords, whatever you want. So you decide how you, and there's no right or wrong. This is just, remember, this is just a prompt for discussion and a different way to look at things. So like if there might be a good language learner and you might have a picture of someone and then you have some different key adjectives of what a good language learner is. So again, and you don't have to do all of them. These are just prompts that can help you. So use your creativity, think outside the box and create something. And then, oh, that was the other thing I wanted to tell you. Have you noticed that there's 2 discussion forums? Okay. The first one is usually there's a task. This is online for the online weeks and then the Facebook. And then there's always one kind of at the end. You don't have to post in that one, but that's just if you have random other questions. So you'll see that there's always 2. It's not because I just accidentally made 2. It's just because one is for the task that we're doing. So you're supposed to do something specifically in that. And then there's just another one that if you wanted to ask a question or you wanted to put anything, you can. So just to clarify. All right. So talk with your groups what you want to do. And then raise your hand if you need a poster from me after you decide what you're doing. Okay. So be creative. Enjoy.
Because we don't have to organize. We can just like one take and we just like random change. We don't have to forget. So that's yeah, just
Yeah, so we have like 2 questions.
Anybody need?
yeah, it doesn't have to like everyone.
I'll see what on.
You already know the question. Like a random.
Okay, so what are characters? We can just write down.
But just remember that you can all brainstorm for the video, and then maybe only the people that want to be in the video can be in the video, but you all are part of the planning.
Does it have like a time structure? Okay, we can have an hour.
I'm leaving at 8, but you can yes, you
Also, we take characters and we want to adapt what they are interested in.
Oh, you can do it out there if you like. Yeah, just do it now.
So when's the deadline?
Well, it's just you want to finish it now, so you don't have to do it later in the week. It doesn't have to be professional. Just do it. Like brainstorm. Professional. And then go out later.
Okay. Just sit outside. Yeah, we don't have like you guys have like a clear HD quality.
You're not being a step down next. Don't worry. But just remember, people will think,
Yeah, pretty cool. So intrigued right now. Yeah. Do it.
Probably parents, they won't realize.
And a good
Okay. We can do whatever we want. We can whisper. How to formulate
There must be a word, aware of being of yourself.
Yeah.
No, what is that?
The second language, like reading a grammar. What is the way the second one? We didn't familiar with second language. First thing we learn words. There are always some difference with the first one.
In a way, it's kind of like that. It's like destroying the continuity.
Because you're going to upload it onto
So motivation can come from themselves, but it can also come from actually enthusiasm is part of intrinsic motivation.
Like without the it's hard to learn
What makes you special?
I think you have experienced this. Have you heard about solar dialectic letter? It's like you don't really.
Are they willing to make
It's
this?
just to be like, because motivation is just like waves up and down, but when you can keep it up, it means that you are special. You just try to find out specific terminology to explain versus there's another thing.
These are really neat. Use the different colors.
What do you guys mean by active? Because when you learn any languages, it can go like language skills can be people who speak well doesn't do not necessarily read. So how does active can accommodate students who learn basically so active
Yes. And then what we can do is there's other groups. Because that's really the best way.
Because there are certain people who do not communicate a lot, but when it comes to reading, so it means those people are cognitively active, physically active. Okay.
The reason why we started this is
The first way.
I would just get rid of it because I think this is just
until there was more. Yeah, I mean, we can create, but it's like, I think it's like, you do need to finish that by next. It's also another line. Yeah, it's just you'll be flushed back and see about what we need to before. Really, and then how maybe this has changed. Maybe it hasn't. Work out how to change what you learned. So you have to have that original for everybody else. And the other thing I would mention is make sure you that is what you have it, because once you send it off, then you won't have it.
stimulating. We have a reason teachers. Yes, I think the English can be enforcement, it can be teachers, it can be whatever. So the external stimulus come from parents, schools, external factors.
I mean, that's fine.
Actually, the problem are struggling is different when it comes to age. So it depends on the age. The solution for children who learn different from the solution to
Yeah, I think that's what the first.
the eyes are just looking at the children.
Going to do things in a normal way they can do what they're doing. And you just give them things that can go solution.
All right, I know this is really sad, but it's, time goes very quickly. We're having so much fun. So much time. Now, what you might do is try to finish this up. Now, you can take this home and finish it if you like, but ideally, I think you probably like to take a picture and upload it. So that I know who is in your group, when you upload it, if you just put Team A, Team B, whichever one, and just your names, because obviously only one person is going to upload it. But you might go ahead and look and comment. I'm just going to quickly tell you a few more things. Okay, assessment task 1. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because I do go through a lot of detail in the video. I think I go on for like 20 minutes. I'm sorry. But I go over the rubric, so what you're going to be assessed on. I go over curriculum frameworks. So if you haven't watched the video, this is in the assessment information, and I created a video. I found that videos are really important because a lot of times, and you may have had this experience, you feel like you're guessing what you're supposed to be doing. The idea for this is I try to make it very clear what you need to do so that what you do is not because you misunderstood the assignment. It's actually what you actually know and can do. Okay, so the task is a lesson plan, about 45 to 50 minutes, that you might teach in your chosen teaching context. Okay, there's a lesson plan template or format on Moodle, and you'll see some examples there. And we'll go over this in week 4 of how we'll look at some examples and compare them. But we'll be looking at things like not only what you will do, so what activities you're going to use, how the resources, how much time it's going to take for each activity, but why you're doing it. Why are you going to give them a review? What does the literature say about reviewing key concepts? You need to justify or argue why you choose to do certain activities. Why are you doing it independently, or why are you working in groups? So there'll be a space where you can argue why you chose to do the things that you did. And the other thing is that you'll need to link it to an assessment outcome. Now, many students from China find that it's really difficult to link it back to the Chinese curriculum. So many people use, and I talk about this in the video, the Common European Framework for and reference for languages. Okay, so have a look at that, and that basically makes it really clear what students need to be doing at different levels. Okay, come with questions in week 4, and you can always email me. The other thing is that you need to have at least 5 academic references that's not your book or not the ones on Moodle, but you might have more than that, but at least 5. And you need to make sure. Oh. You also need to include any teaching material. So if you are going to use something like worksheets, you need to include it as an appendix. So you can't just say, oh, there's going to be this worksheet and it's really great. You have to include it. So everything that you use, you need to put in. And it also needs to be your own work. Now, I know we modify and we shape things. That's okay. But try not to, and if you have like a transcript or maybe you're doing something, that's fine. Like if you're using a reading text or something from a book or from a textbook, that's okay. But the activities need to be your own activities. Okay, so you're not just taking it and say, we're going to do headway pages 4 to 6. Okay, you need to actually create your own. And this is your opportunity to think about something interesting that you might do. But I'll answer all your questions about that in our next face-to-face. Assessment task 2 is really like an essay. You're going to have a topic and you're going to discuss it, and then you're going and talk about it within the context of your own teaching context. And then you're going to also give some practical activities. So for example, if you say in my country speaking, I think I was talking with Monroe about this, sorry Monroe, and that speaking is something that's quite underdeveloped and something that she wanted to know more about because she feels that students need to have a better understanding and more opportunities to practice speaking. So maybe then you create some activities that are based on speaking. Okay. So, and we'll talk more about that. I will make sure that I am helping you every step of the way. I'm not going to just leave you to figure it out on your own, so don't worry about that. Last and final thing, and then we'll get out of here, is there is an assessment aspect, or I think it's at the very beginning of week 1, maybe. There is a reflection on your learning aspirations. What's that? This is something that you have, it's not marked, and it's just reflections. You don't have to put references, you don't have to put anything like that, but it's really what you think about. There's some key questions there to prompt you. But the idea is that for your second assignment, you will come back to that and you will say something like, well, at the beginning of the semester, I thought this, but now I think I've learned, and maybe you haven't changed your ideas, and you say, this was my reflection, but now I find that I'm thinking about this and this. So it's the idea that could kind of let you reflect on how your thinking might have maybe changed or how it's kind of progressed. Okay? Or maybe it's not. Maybe you say, I still think that this is true. Or you say, I originally was just interested in listening, but I found over the course of this thing that I became really interested in writing. How to help support students in their writing. Okay. So make sure you do that week 1 or that reflection. Okay. So it needs to be done by week 3. All right. Make sure you're doing your reading. I'll speak. Yeah, don't worry. Familiarize yourself with the lesson plan format. Just start looking at the assessment tasks. Get your head ready for that. Begin thinking about what curriculum framework you're going to use, and then complete the online activity for week 3. Okay. All right. How are you feeling? Are you pumped? Are you excited? Yeah. This is going to be your best class. I'm putting the stakes up. This is going to be your favorite class. Oh my God. Because I'm bringing snacks week 4. Yeah. Please. Okay. All right. Lovely to meet you. Feel free to email if you have questions. And look at me.